Can you tell me a little bit about what you covered today?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So this was focused on leadership in an uncertain economy, because that's what we're in right now.
Exactly.
And my main message is that we're at a crossroads. This is not a blip. This is not a temporary situation. It's not appropriate really at this point to just kind of grit your teeth and hold on and try and get through it, because soon everything's going to be back the way it was. I'm saying it's not going to be back the way it was. There are too many forces in effect here. And when you have an economic shakeup like we have right now, the natural order of things changes. And if you look at like the 80s when there was a recession, or other times when there's been severe economic pressure, people who are on top disappear or go to the bottom. People on the bottom move to the top. People who you've never heard of suddenly are major players. Major players disappear or move to the periphery. So that's the environment we're in. And what that means is that it's a real opportunity for leaders. What they have to be able to do, and this is what visionaries do, and the reason I know this is because I've worked with visionaries. I worked with Jim Wolfenson at the World Bank, Gaddy Vasquez at the Peace Corps, senior managers at Royal Dutch Shell. When things get tough, it's like they have these glasses and it filters out the anxiety. And what they see are opportunities, because the environment is changing. There's these pressures. And so what I'm encouraging the CEOs to do is to take note of what's in the environment, and I talk about exactly what those factors are in the class.
You mentioned opportunity, the fact that we are in this current economy. What are some of the opportunities amidst all of this chaos today?
Okay. Well, if you look at, let's look at like 5 areas that are the kind of the key indicators that we're in the midst of a shakeup. And I think anyone who's in the association industry, in fact, many people in business will just recognize these. Meetings, travel is constricted, difficult. It's certainly down. The percentages are down. Membership dues are an easy target to cut costs. Credit is frozen and sluggish, so people can't borrow money even if they have good assets. Portfolios are shrunken because of the stocks, not just organizationally but personally, and so people don't want to spend money because they're afraid because their money is dwindling, and alternative revenues are down. Now, if any one of those 5 things was happening by itself, or even 2 of them, we could say, well, maybe we'll still just shake out and we'll be okay. But they're all 5 happening at the same time. So that's how we know that we're at a crossroads. What do you do with those? You need to look at the environment. Let's take meetings, for example. People will be traveling less. Meetings will go down. So it's not an either we do face-to-face or we do virtual. It's both. So what does it mean to do, for example, virtual? Well, you have to look at where are the success stories. And one of the biggest success stories that will be a success story for a long time is myBarackObama.com. Chris Hughes, formerly with Facebook, created the software package, and it enabled 350,000 groups of people to form. 70,000 people put up web pages and raised about $400 each, and that generated $30 million for the campaign. These web pages created face-to-face groups, so people were able to self-organize and come together. So it's not virtual or face-to-face, it's virtual that enabled face-to-face. Okay, so you've got virtual tools. You need to pay attention to how do we use these virtual tools, but then you also need to pay attention to how do you increase the value for the people who do show up. So you have your most valuable players who will make it to the meetings, and what you want to do is create an experience for them that's above and beyond what they've ever gotten before. And in fact, some organizations can create experiences that are so much more valuable that people will pay more money than they've paid before to show up. So meetings is an example where you look at the forces, the pressures that are there, and you say something new is really emerging out of this.
That's a great example, and meetings is such an important part of associations and the way that we do business. Can you touch a little bit on non-dues revenue and what the impact is there and how we can be creative maybe?
Sure. So it's the same thing. The question is, where is the value that your members are looking for? So for example, I know people who are CEOs of realtor organizations where their membership has been decimated by what's going on in the housing industry. And they're providing for their members things like exposure to alternative incomes. These people need to get up and running. Short selling is a huge issue among realtors, and so they're providing classes in short selling. Many realtor organizations do not provide classes in them, and people are just out of luck. Those that are providing are having people flock to them. So another example of non-dues revenue, I know of an organization, the United Telecom Council, where each of their members has to basically have their own walkie-talkie system when the electricity in the phone system goes down to operate in an emergency situation. So Bill Maroney, the CEO of the United Telecom Council, actually created, he went out and did the research and he found the right product, and then he was able to sell that to each of his member organizations. So he found a common need and was able to create a profit center from that. So the organizations that are really understanding where the pain points are and serving their members are the ones who are able to generate alternatives in revenue.
What do you say to those executives who say, we don't have time to think out of the box. We have to look at what's going on today. What do you tell them?
They've got to make time to look out of the box. All of the research shows, and there's been a lot of research now with economic recessions, is that those organizations that innovate during a recession are the ones that are not only first out of the starting gate when the recession recedes, but they're the ones that survive and that lead the pack. So even though it's a difficult time to spend money because the coffers are shrinking, now is the time when you have to innovate. You need to force yourself to come up with new ideas and to grow your organization. And the rewards are accelerated growth when the recession starts to recede, and even repositioning. You can come out higher up with your competition than you went into it with.
Right. And any final words of encouragement to CEOs, senior executives who are really grappling with these issues? Any one key point or points you'd like to share?
Well, 2 points. I have a good friend, David Gamble, who talks about zombie cows. A zombie cow is a sacred cow that lives among the walking dead. If your organization has something that is dead and that needs to be stripped away, you have a perfect excuse to do it right now. Sometimes there are these sacred cows that members hold on to, like we always have to have this going on at a conference room, and it's a business loss leader. Now's the time you have an excuse to get rid of it, which means you have an excuse to really streamline your organization and make it focused on the value that it generates. The second thing is that this is a time when visionaries really rise to the surface and you see real transformation. So if a leader has a big dream for their organization, now is the time when you can make it happen. I mean, Abraham Lincoln went into office trying to hold the Union together. By the time he was done, he was able to sign the Emancipation Proclamation. In this country, if you had asked anybody, could we abolish slavery during that time in history, most people would have said no, the country's not ripe. But because of this awful cauldron of forces, he was able to take things much farther, and look at where we are today as a result of that. Here we have the first African American in that office in the White House. So this is a time now when people and visionaries can rise to the surface and they can get more done than people can even dream is possible. I think that's tremendously exciting.